welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Anika. Today we have Mr. Ean with us, and we're gonna talk about a topic that's been getting pretty kind of popularized in modern times, and that's polygamy. Before we get into it, I'm gonna have Ean introduce himself, where you're from, what you do.
Good evening, everybody. The name is Ean McIntosh, and I'm from Jamaica. I live in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. I am one of the associate ministers at the Hope Bay Church of Christ in charge of technology, media, and communications. I'm also studying full-time at the Jamaica School of Preaching and Biblical Studies. I do study theology. On this side, I do graphic design and simple video design and emceeing, and I also work with Wesinco as a brand ambassador. Otherwise, outside of that, I still do community service. I'm with the Backpack Jamaica, and I'm their liaison officer for this area. And of course, I still do passive leadership with the St. Anne Police Youth Club Council by assisting in their chaplaincy services, their moral development department. That is basically me. Oh yes, and my hobby is writing poems. I'm a poet. I haven't written in a little while. Maybe I need something to punch my emotions a little bit, but yes, outside of that, I am a poet. What did I miss? I think that is it.
Nice. I mean, you summed up your background. I was going to ask you to give them your background, because I like for people to understand where, the person that I'm speaking to, I like them to understand where your perspective is coming from. So thank you for sharing that. Before we get into whether or not people should be polygamous or whatever the case may be, I do want to point out some polygamous or polygamy terms, just so that the audience can understand. Polygamy is one person essentially being married to multiple people. So like one man to two women. That would be called polygyny. One woman to multiple men would be polyandry, and then polyamory would be multiple people with multiple people. And in me looking up more about polyamory, I was seeing that you don't actually have to be married to practice polyamory. So those are just some basic terms in the polygamous community. So for you, Ean, I wanted to know, do you think that human beings are designed to be polygamous?
All right. So upon the definitions that you just gave for polygamy, and I myself have looked at them several times over the past years, being as when you are in a service organization such as a police youth club, or you're in a religious organization such as the church, these are things that people come up with all the time, and they ask you questions about these things all the time. Personally, I don't believe persons should be polygamous, and there are several reasons for that. Now, as per the reasons given, sometimes when you simplify the meanings of all of these terms, polyandry, polygyny, polyamory, and you get to realize that it may seem like something that opens your options to having freedom of relationships, but what it does is that it deals some amount of damage to the whole family structure. And this is outside of just being religious. So I'm not even going to say anything religious about it just yet. There are religious, of course, examples, but just yet, we're talking about just the social aspect of polygamy, where it can what you call damage the whole family structure, especially if you get offsprings from one of these poly relationships. It does what you call, from an economical point of view, unless you are a rich person, it's something that can also affect you. Take, for example, most of us Jamaicans, I'm not sure about Americans, but most of us Blacks, so let me say Blacks, I've had grandfathers that have fathered 10 and 15 and 20 children. My dad fathered 15 who are still alive. Well, 17, but 2 died, should I say. My uncle fathered 14 biological and maybe about 7 or 8 stepchildren. Now, the difference between both of them is that my uncle was rich. And so he was a business person. So there was a level of comfort within his kids from that point of view. My father was not. And so his polygamous relationships did not work out as well, because when you go to the farm and you have to share with all of your quote unquote wives or children's mothers that know about each other, it causes problems. Now, the other reason I'd like to explore is the fact that, you see, polyamory is when all partners, what you call give permission, they're okay with you having multiple partners. Yeah. And so some of our grandparents and whatever that gives us the examples, they were in polygamous relationships, but these relationships were not polyamorous because they had multiple people and multiple children, multiple people. Neither of the multiples consented to him having multiple. They simply adjusted to the idea, maybe because of the then financial situation.
Yeah, so I have a question for you though. I know you said for your rich uncle, it didn't make things so difficult, but for the one that was poorer, right? The argument that some people have for polygamy is that all those people, so like the different women he got pregnant, they all could have like banded their finances together. So like, for example, if me and another woman are working like regular jobs, let's say we're making 40K a year or whatever, and the man is also making, let's say 40K, to make the number simple, that household could have 120K. So some people make the argument that everyone can band together. And even if you want to be more polyamory, if you add another man in, and let's say he's making 50K too, that's now you bring us to 170, So some people make the argument that with polygamy, people can band their resources together. How do you feel about that?
All right. So everything that the world designs, there are always better ways to do it. So it's always, you can always band your resources together if that is your lifestyle. There's that's something that we can agree on, that if you choose that type of lifestyle, you can band your resources together to make it better. You see, when I presented earlier on, it's whether or not we should. But whether this that you present to me is whether or not it's already happening. For example, whether from a religious point of view, we could ask the question whether or not we should have sex with somebody whom we are not married to. I can always say no from a religious perspective. However, from a social perspective, it is already happening. So the solution to that is you use a condom, or you have a faithful partner with you. It will be the same thing with poly relationships. If you are already socially a part of that, then this would be one solution to how you can remedy the situation. But on most occasions, the solution is not normally enacted onto the fact that, like I said, many of the times the persons in these relationships, they don't seek permission from their partners. They just engage in these things and they just stay in it because of circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but for the purpose of this video, we're not going to talk about the people who, didn't purposely engage in it, because, of the past, men lied, and I mean, even some women lied as well. So we're not gonna include those people who did it without permission. But in modern times where it just seems like a lot of things are becoming openness and open this and open that, and the lines are more blurred with everything. And so in regards to that, for the people who are upfront about it, who says, yeah, I want to be polygamous, for the men and women that want to say they want to be that way, what are the, I mean, are there negatives to that if that's what they chose?
Um, the thing is that we can find a positive and or negative for each situation. Um, and so there are positives and negatives for all situations, yes. And so when it comes to polygamy, sometimes the positives are that you have the ability to explore, and many persons don't know what it is like to explore their sexuality. And so it does give you an opportunity to explore your sexuality. It also gives person a different perspective on different types of relationships. And when you have several relationships going on at the same time, it does give you some form of education when it comes to dealing with different personalities. Now, if you're dealing with a relationship where you have different types of polyamory. You can have the group type where the group interaction where they're all in the same relationship together. That is probably more beneficial than one being in a relationship with another who is in a relationship with another, and this person is in a relationship with another. You get what I'm saying? So there are benefits and positives to being in such a situation. However, my contention is that there are long-term circumstances when it comes to these things, and this is what I'm looking at from this point of view, where, like I said, for the sake of the conversation, this is something that we all consent to. There are still repercussions.
No, I understand. You're saying there are repercussions. And I mean, I've done my own research. I understand some of the repercussions. I mean, you look at countries that are mostly polygamous, and they're not thriving like the countries that are more monogamous, right? But my question for you is, what are those repercussions? Like, you keep saying there are long-term repercussions, but what are they?
All right. The long-term repercussions of poly relationships. And allow me now to be a bit, to go to, for those who believe in the Bible. I do, but not everyone who listens to these things do believe. But I'm going to draw at some of my examples from the Bible, being as I'm that type of person. Now, most of us would have known the stories about Rachel and Leah, or Sarah and Hagar. Let me use those as examples. Sarah and Hagar. The short-term benefit of that was Abraham was getting old, and he was putting in place an heir or a son to take over after him, even though God had promised him a son by his wife. And so the human part of you will say, well, this is not going to happen, so let me take another route, a shortcut. And so Sarah, seeing that she was also old, decided that, hey, take my handmaiden and get her pregnant, because in those days, your slave or servant being pregnant for your husband is basically your surrogate. And so basically what she's saying to Abraham, well, I'm old, take my surrogate. Now, in the short term, it may seem beneficial because he is now legally the father of a son. And remember, God told him that he's going to be a father of many nations. What was the long term? The long term was that Isaac came into the picture. And so the two women had art because Sarah was now jealous of the other woman who was in the house, because now the other woman has a child for her own husband. And so the women contended against each other, and the woman, being the slave, had to be the one to leave the house with Ishmael. As you can see, it never stops, and it had never stopped until now, where Christianity and Islam are still at war, whether physically or religiously, because of that separation between Isaac and Ishmael. So Christianity came through Isaac, Islam came through Ishmael, and they have warred over lands, or should I say the Jews? Let me use the Jews for this purpose. The Jews and the Ishmaelites, or the Jews and the Muslims, they are always at war. And so because Christianity came through that, we're still at war, whether or not directly with Muslims. And so this is an example of the long-term effect that it can have. From a modern social point of view, if you're supposed to raise a family, it causes detachment. In my ancestry, my forefathers, father and the grandfather, whatever, how the detachment came along is that he was never committed. He was committed to one, but because he had several, the one that he was committed to lost trust in him. The relationship broke apart, and each woman had their 2, 3, 4, 5 children to each other. What happened was that he could not take care of all of those households. The short-term effect that he has a lot of children. The long-term is that we all got detached because of that broken family structure as a result of his polygamous relationships.
I think for my audience and the ones who do consider polygamy, you know, or do have arguments for polygamy, you saying that he was poor and doing those things, is that an argument against really polygamy, or is that an argument against the fact that he was poor? Because if he wasn't poor, I guess would there still be those detachment issues?
Yes. Yes, because the detachment was not because of his poverty. His poverty compacted the issue, but the issue wasn't his poverty really. The issue was the detachment, because like I said, the women remained in the relationship. In other words, they knew about each other and they remained in the relationship with him anyhow, even though they didn't have a say in the initial aspect of it. Now, what happened was that after a while, like ancient days, women started to contend, because now, oh, he loves me more, he loves me more, he loves me more, no, he loves me more, no, he loves me more. And then what happened is that because they went their separate ways, even if he was rich and was taking care of each household effectively, he could not be an effective father to each of the household effectively because of the detachment. They're all over the place. And so even if he could send child support everywhere that they went, he still could not be effective in fatherhood because his polygamous relationship broke apart and everyone went their separate ways. And we know that fatherhood is more than just providing financial assistance.
No, yeah, of course. But okay, what do you say in the cases like in countries, a lot of like Muslim countries where they practice polygamy, they typically have the woman all living inside the home with the man. I mean, there are history as well of polyandry where, you know, there's a woman with more than one man, but mostly what's promoted is polygyny, which is the one man with multiple women. But for those households where, let's say it's 2 or 3 women that are living in the house with the man and the children, I mean, what's necessarily so bad about that?
All right, so that is a part of polyamory that borders on group relationship and egalitarian networking, where there may be multiple persons in a relationship. They may not be in a relationship with each other, but they may all be in a relationship with one person, as well as they may all be in a relationship with each other, you know, for the meaning of that. There may be nothing inherently what you call detrimental if everyone decided to pool, like as I said earlier on, in that type of thing. But we're going to approach it from a semi-moral point of view, where you see, we're also designed to be emotional people. When you have so many persons in your household that you're having sexual relationships with, it does break you emotionally and psychologically. Now, for some of those countries, societies, I will understand that what they have done is that they have removed the emotions from their, what you call, from their culture, basically, and put what you call duty. So I am a father, I'm a husband, I have several wives in the household. To me, it doesn't matter which one I love or which one I do not love, as long as they are doing what they're supposed to do as wives, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as husband. And so the emotional aspect of it becomes broken. Now, if in that household you have him falling in love with one and another, and so I can draw another biblical example to this, where Rachel and Leah were in a relationship with Jacob. And so what happened was that Jacob loved Rachel and worked 14 years for her. For Leah, she was a default because she was the older one. They all lived in the same house and they all adjusted to living in the same house, but between them, there were still hidden emotions. And so Leah tried to use her childbearing abilities to appease her husband so that he may love her. Of course, I can just imagine the trauma that she probably would have gone through, knowing that she has to use her ability to bear children to appease her husband. But Rachel, who could not bear children, she is the one who he was in love with. Quite a contrasting situation there. So coming to these villages that have these things, you may have these situations there from a psychological point of view. These things do happen, but like I said before, they are sometimes accepted because guess what? This is a situation that we are in. It doesn't make sense. I emotionally attach myself to this person. It's like in Jamaican terms, a man a give a bun, you know, you say man give a bun, you just accept the bun because you don't believe anything else is, anything better is out there, or he's doing this good for you, or what it would be pretty much the same thing. You know, Tanya Stevens did a song some time ago that she said she called the side chick and say, hey, well, we're going to share this man. And so let me give you some tips on how to please him, because if he looks bad on you, he looks bad on both of us. You get what I'm saying? It's the same principle and it can be accepted, but most times at the expense of somebody's psychological or emotional health.
Oh, yeah, I totally understand that. And I think even in me speaking to people who think about the idea of polygamy and things like that, I'm always just like, there's always going to be one person you're going to just like a little bit more. You're going to love a little bit more. And then when you bring children into the picture, the kids are going to feel that, you know, because kids who, a lot of kids who come from those homes are, you know, a little psychologically different. Let me put it that way. But
you know,
yeah,
like I said, the detachment does affect them psychologically. Like, you know, children want to be identified with a mother and a father, you know.
Yeah, and I think
so
giving
that will
them
affect them
multiple
psychologically.
mothers and multiple, like, to say, okay, you have 3 mothers, that would just, you know, that I don't think that people realize how that's playing out in society with all the openness that's going on. It psychologically does affect kids to where they may start losing their identities. And I'm not saying I'm for or against polygamy. Personally, I wouldn't want to live that life simply because, number one, I feel like the man is always going to love one person more, or I mean, I don't want to be with multiple men anyway, so that would never happen. But even if I'm with one guy and he wanted another wife, I feel like he's going to love one more. And number two, I would definitely feel some type of way if my kids aren't like a priority, You know what I'm saying? So like, and me coming from broken homes myself, it does affect children very much. So I wouldn't want that for my children. And that's really my biggest argument against it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying what people should do, but I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying, look at the psychological effects on your kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to get back to one point of whether or not humans are designed to be polygamous. I know you're biblical, but understand that, you know, these modern times, it seems like people have been going away from the Bible more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not people were designed to be polygamous, I have the question for you because before biblical times or before marriage was a thing, human beings were freely having sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't really any laws to tie a woman to a man. And I'll point out that one of the issues with that was that back then there wasn't anything to test paternity. So essentially that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where the, you know, you get raised by the village came from, because no, you couldn't really tell who the father of a child was, because women were freely having sex just like men were. And there are people who are polygamous who believe that that's the way it should have been. But back then, of course, there wasn't any way to test paternity. But today, in modern times, there are ways to test paternity. If let's say a woman is having sex with multiple men or man having sex with multiple women, you can test paternity. And so people are trying to go back in a sense almost to those times where people are just freely having sex. So what necessarily is the issue with that? Is there an issue with that?
All right. So we're humans designed to have multiple people. Um, so in order for us to answer that effectively, we would have to compare the psychological, social, and physical aspect of both men and women to see whether on how realistic this would be. The most realistic part of it is that both genders can have multiple sex partners. We can, you know, that and that's from a physical, you know, point of view. Both partners are able to have multiple sex partners, whether it be per night or just overall. So if you are not going to have any children, you don't want to be emotionally attached or anything, you just want to be you just want to be a free-spirited person. So, and on, you know, for the sake of the audience, you know, being a free-spirited person and having multiple sexual partners is also regarded as poly, as long as none of the partners, you're not like married to one and then cheating on such a person. That's a total different kettle of fish. So if you are single and you're having several sex partners, it is still a poly situation, whether or not you want to put it under polyamory or whichever other category of such. Now, from a physical point of view, as I said before, both genders are able to have multiple sex partners. Where we have the design, what you call difference, is if both persons, either gender wishes to have children. Now we have a large gap. The record, the modern day record for a man having children or fathering children is probably over 100. There was this guy who was called Joe Donor. Nobody knows his real name. That he goes around and he donates his sperm to women, and he is known to have over 100 children in over 600 clients. And so you do have that situation arising over a period of time. A man is able to make a village from his sperm. A woman, on the other hand, is unable to do that, owing to the fact that it takes probably 1 in 6 tries for a woman to actually get pregnant. And this is just statistic. If she's highly fertile, it's the first time. But if you should put all the stats, all of them together, the overall the statistic is 1 in 6 tries, or 1 in 4 at the best, is when a woman gets pregnant. If she has several men who want children, being able to get pregnant on average once per year, let me put it that at that once per year, in order for her to give her 3 or 4 men 1 child apiece, she will now have to have 1 child per year apiece. In order for her to create in order for her to create a village, it will take her several years of having children. And then after those several years, those children have to grow. By the time she's 40, she may have maybe about 16 or 15 children, and maybe only 2 out of those children are able to start reproducing legally, while a man at the same age of 40 can have 20, 25 or 30 children, and all of them are of the same age, because of his rate of impregnation of women can be all in the same day. So from a physical point of view, they're able to have partners, but from a family point of view, it wouldn't be the most realistic for a woman to have several husbands, owing to the fact that creating a family will be way more technical for her, especially if each of them want 2 children apiece. That's a tiring thing to do.
Yeah, but I mean, when I'm saying are humans designed to be polygamous, I'm not necessarily meaning just the children aspect of it. I'm talking the emotional and even just for sex, right? Because like I said, before marriage was put in place, which mainly marriage was put in place so that and even the concept of virginity, it was put in place so that a woman could be tied to a man. That way they would know that that child belonged to that man, and they needed, the man needed to pass on his property or whatever. And the only way to know if the offspring was his, it was for a woman to remain a virgin until she was married. And then when she got married and that's her husband and that's the only person she's having sex with, it was easy to tell paternity. But before that, people were freely having sex, and there was no way to determine who is the father and stuff like that. But I'm saying now in modern times you can. So what's really stopping people from being able to freely have sex again, now that there are things in place where a woman would be able to tell who the father is, and a man would be able to identify his children. Like what's stopping people from just being polygamous now, since essentially that's how they were beforehand?
Okay, so 2 things. And like I said, because I already explained the religious aspect of it, and this does also have a lot to do with religion, by the way. Also have a lot to do with religion, belief, because we know the Bible says, a man, it's good that a man not touch a woman, but let every man have his own wife and every woman have her own husband, and the house is sanctified by the believing wife or believing husband. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, you can see where the single parent household is being described, and where the Bible also says in the book of Hebrews, I don't want to misquote for the purpose of YouTube, but you can look it up, where it says marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. So from a religious point of view, first and foremost, it is something that is described as atrocious, from a spiritual point of view, because if God commanded, or if the Bible commands that you have one wife, one husband, make your bed undefiled by virtue of marriage, then you should do what the Bible says. Now, because the world is moving away from being godly, let me speak from a physical point of view. Now, what we already explained earlier on, the repercussions of having several husbands or wives. However, why are people not being able to have sex nowadays on multiple partners? Because nowadays it's way more risky. The risks associated with having several sex partners is that with the increase of diseases, shows that persons who have had multiple sex partners are way more likely to catch a disease, a sexually transmitted disease, than somebody who doesn't. And I mean, anybody can catch it once you're sleeping with somebody. But on most occasions, even if me as a committed person have caught HIV or syphilis from my wife, one of us have been promiscuous at some point in time. That's the highest chance. If neither of us have been very promiscuous, neither of us were virgins, and so the person who we had the first sex with was promiscuous. But most of the time, it comes from somebody who was sexually promiscuous. They have several sexual partners. All right. So that's what's preventing persons from having it from a social point of view. The emotional aspect of it is that, well, we explained earlier on, it breaks you emotionally. It makes you harder to fall in love and harder to love when you remove the love from the sex and start giving it to several sex partners. And if we should run a survey on men who have had multiple women and women who have had multiple men by a certain age, you will get to find out that these persons have way more emotional baggage, less likely to trust, harder to fall in love or harder to love, harder to find somebody to settle down with and date, because by that time, that which is expected to be given to your husband or whatever has now been expended to the whole world. For some persons, they just keep it and continue to have multiple relationships without emotions, but it does break you down psychologically. The more for persons who have been very promiscuous, like people who have been playboy or persons who have been prostitutes, would have told you that they had to remove the emotion from sex, and that is where sex with multiple people becomes dangerous, because sex is supposed to be you transferring your energy to somebody else. I just decided to start it. Where was I? So both of them are asexual. Explain better to me.
So asexual means that the person isn't really into sex like that. They might not want to have sex at all. So if one or two of the partners don't really care for sex, don't want to have sex, would that make, from your perspective, of course, would that make the relationship better?
It would also depend on what kind of relationship are they in, because this would seem more like a platonic friendship with aspects of marriage involved in it. Because if I want to have sex, and let me put myself in a situation, if I want to have sex, and my wife doesn't, she's asexual, then that is more platonic than intimate. And I'm not saying that intimate relationships can't work that way. I'm just saying that the whole aspect of being polygamous or polyamorous, whichever one we're going to use to describe each situation, is that there are sexual relations involved. So if there are no sexual relations involved and I have just several wives who I'm not having sex with, then in order for me to assess that situation, I would have to find out what is the purpose, because that would even make the situation even more objectified. Because if you are just here, if I'm impotent, but I'm your sugar daddy, I'm being objectified as somebody who provides financial assistance. If you cannot have sex with me, but I'm with you because of I want a green card, then you are objectified as somebody who provides an opportunity. That in of itself is a very dangerous thing, because what it does is that it may mean that this person is not emotionally attracted to you. They are just attracted to that which you have to offer. Now, you will have situations where both persons are very much in love, and I've seen the exceptions, of course, very much in love, but they are unable to have sex because of a physical issue. Then that is different. That is not objectification, because the prevention of having sex is not that I'm asexual. It's just that I want to, but I have a physical issue that prevents me from being that way. But it does, on most occasions, lead to the objectification of the person who wants to have the sex, but is not getting any. And what that person will do is that they will go outside and get it. And that in and of itself, if it's done without consent, it's cheating. But with consent, we can legally call it polygamy. But then where would it put the persons who are asexual in that relationship? What purpose would they serve?
Okay. Yeah, I never looked at it that way, but that is true. Like if you know, some of the persons don't want to have sex, then it's just like, and granted, of course, relationships aren't just about sex, but it would be more like, okay, this is a platonic relationship. So why are you here other than for like whatever financial benefits, right? Okay, so yeah, I totally get your point on that. But the other thing too with it, even if let's say we have one man and three wives, and this is how I view it. Like whenever men try to bring the polygamy argument to me, it's like I understand the concept of being able to, let's say if he is a man with financial means that can provide for them, that part makes sense, right? But like you said, that's just objectifying it, and there's no true love. And if that's what you want to live your life and carry out the rest of your life just as an object where there's no true love, then cool, do you. But that's not what I personally want. I want true love. And I feel like personally, for me, I feel like you wouldn't necessarily get that in a poly relationship. Or maybe one of the persons would get it, but the others would not, which, you know, I would find unfair. But the other thing about it is, let's say four people, one man, let's just use one man and three women. And for people watching and who's polygamous or whatever, I know that's not the only way to do polygamy, but let's just speak about what's a little bit more popularized, right? So let's say we have one man with two or three women, and you know, they agree to be in this relationship. Now it becomes where you're not just, well, one man trying to satisfy three women sexually. Good luck. Because a man's body, and that's kind of my argument. I'm like, a man's body is not even designed to keep up with multiple women at a time. And men make the argument that they can have spread their seed and all that. Sure. But when it comes to an actual relationship, your body is not even designed to please multiple. A woman's body is designed to please multiple. However, it
You see,
came with restrictions.
not to cut you, you know, but each of the genders have what you call limitations to what you were saying. Because while a man, you know, a man can impregnate 9 women per day from a physical point of view. That's having sex with 9 women for the day. And this can happen every day for a period of time, or at least 2 or 3 days out of the week. It does that. How far does the multiple go if you have like 3 women? Now, a woman's body is, of course, I will admit, physically set up to accommodate 5, 6, 7 men within the same hour. A man can't do that, of course. It will affect him physically if he tries that. It's probably 1 or 2 or 3 for the hour. A woman can do 1 for each minute of the hour and still be okay at the end of the hour, right? And either gender can, but the woman handles it better. So it would, for, you know, I just wanted to add that part of it. That
No, and that's what I was trying to explain. Like a man physically can't have sex with that many women. Like he, well, not have, but can't please multiple women in short periods of time. Like, whereas the woman can. However, she can only get pregnant for like one at a time every 9-10 months, whatever, right? Whereas the man can impregnate multiple. So I feel like personally, I've always said God gave us these limitations for a reason.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not no crazy biblical person or anything like that. It's just when you just look at the logic in it, it's like we have these limitations for a reason. Like, sure, a woman can go have sex with 20 men, but
Mhm.
I mean, do you even want to be attached to 20 as a woman? Like, you know,
You see
not
where the
just as a woman,
physical
but
falls off.
as a
Well,
person, it's like, do you, not just as a woman, but even just as a person, a man or a woman, do you want to be attached to that many spirits and that many, and then their partners as well? But the other thing I had with the poly life, especially as it relates to one man with multiple women, is if I was in a poly relationship, like I have the type of personality to get along with people. So I don't think I'd have an issue getting along with people. The issue would be just the lack of true love, of knowing that, okay, he's always gonna like one more, but not just that, but even from a sexual standpoint, you're gonna have to be trusting that these other women are not going out and having sex with people and coming
mhm.
back and saying that they're not.
Well, you
Trust to
see,
put it in a lot of people.
you may get along well with people. However, the long and short about getting along with people, is not getting along, is the sharing. Because if you um get horny tonight and you need some sex tonight, but he's busy giving service to woman number 5, and woman number 6 was already in line before you, who was woman number 8, it is
It's
going to
just
start.
like the whole concept just seems such a mess. You know, it's just like,
I mean, people make it
okay,
work. I will say the exceptions
those
that people
women
actually make it work.
are, huh?
People have made it work. I've seen documentaries where people actually have made it work and it worked for them for a long time. But those are the exceptions.
Sure, yeah. But I'm just like, just to think about the concept that those women that are in waiting
Mm-hmm.
are gonna go out and go get theirs. Like you're gonna think, oh, she's just gonna be okay with sitting there and not getting any, but she's gonna go out. And we already spoke about this financial aspect in when it comes to like divvying up for the children.
Mm-hmm.
If the kids, I'd say it would probably, if you have like, let's say it was a rich man with multiple properties and everything, it might be a little difficult to equally split everything against the kids. And who's to say that one woman won't say that her kids deserve more? And to
I
me,
mean,
that can
even in the celebrity
prevent
world,
a
we
lot
see that
of
happen.
like dissension among the siblings. So I don't know. It's just like, to me, it's like I understand what some people are coming from as far as like pulling your resources together, but I don't think you
Mhm.
need to have be in a relationship with multiple people to pool resources together. Um, and I mean, if you do believe in having sex with multiple people, then I guess then that part would work for you. Um,
Mhm.
if that's what you believe. But I'm not gonna knock people for doing what they do. If that works for you, I'll just always say, think about the children. That's just my views on it. Think about the
Mhm.
children. But if it works for you, then do what works for you.
Um,
Um,
what I will say to them though, because I know it's winding down. So what I will say to them for the record is, um, outside of you think about the children, but I'd like to add, think of your psychological health and your respect for the opposite sex. Um, like I said earlier on, a man that deliberately has sex with multiple women without commitment, um, is somebody who very much does not have as much respect for a woman as for somebody who does it either with consent or has one faithful partner. The gap is very, very wide. And you can see it where a man will know, polygamy is in our music and our movies, and you can take up any random rap song and it says, well, I got money and I got many women in the car with me and I gotta get ahead tomorrow and ahead the following day. And so they brag about how many heads they get from how many women they get because it's a bragging right. You see it?
Yeah, I could understand that viewpoint. I guess the other thing that people say with polygamy versus, let's say, monogamy, for example, is that polygamy would prevent cheating. Because a lot of people cheat because they want to explore, and polygamy would give them that option to have multiple people, and not just cheating, but also that some people say that one person cannot fulfill all your needs. So if one person cannot fulfill all your needs, why not be in a polygamous relationship where you can have multiple people who can cater to the various needs?
Let me put it this way. You humans are never satisfied. Never. In fact, when you hear a human say, I am satisfied, it means that they have adjusted to this and they will not attach themselves to anything else that is available for this purpose. But from a physical point of view, a human is never satisfied. Because even if I should close down and say, I'm satisfied with the way how my wife makes love to me, all I need is for someone to get me drunk or tipsy and carry a random woman from somewhere to give me head that I've never had before. And that is when I realized that, wait a minute, I was only satisfied because I did not know what else was available and didn't care to find out. Now I become a serial cheater. So they said it prevents cheating because each partner would be okay with you having multiple partners, but you are never satisfied. 5 men can never satisfy you, because when the 5 men satisfy you, what is happening is it comes like you're thirsty, but instead of having 1 glass of water, you're having 6 cups of wine. It's liquid. It quenches the thirst for 2 seconds, and then you want more. But what it actually does, it makes you drunk and it makes you more thirsty. That's what having several sexual people is like. Becoming, requiring this, having a substitute, having it in a different form, and you become more thirsty for it. So it is the same liquid that makes these sugary drinks, but sometimes you need to understand, hey, have just 1 glass of water instead of having 5 or 6 cups of something else, because you'll just only become more thirsty the more you try to quench your thirst with the same thing.
No, that's true. But I wasn't even just speaking from a sexual standpoint. Some people feel like they have to be in a relationship with multiple people because one person can satisfy their other needs, like not just the sexual needs, but whatever other needs they need mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like one person can't do that. So what would you say to that?
Let me say this, is that satisfaction comes internally, where you have to now tell yourself or direct yourself to that which makes you satisfied in terms of, let me put it this way, it may be financially. Then let me look at financially, emotionally. This person may be giving you all the money, but he's probably not giving you the type of sex that, not sex, the type of emotional, he's not there for you if you're bereaved or depressed or sad or lonely. He just said, oh, hey, here's $1 million. And tomorrow he said, I'm feeling quite lonely. Okay, I'm sorry, here's $1 million. But and the things that you're looking for, the sentiments that you're looking for is not there. Recently, I saw a woman saying that she doesn't want a husband because all of the things that she can buy, a sex toy, she can pay a gardener, she can pay a plumber, and then it gives her time to go and do all that she wants. But you know what that happened is that if I should put that into a poly situation, this person will be the contrast to somebody who is thirsty. She has a man, but he's not going to mow the lawn. He's going to pay somebody to mow it. He's going to pay somebody to do the plumbing. He's going to pay somebody to come and paint. But the satisfaction a woman feels when she sees her husband actually doing some work around the house, it gives her what you call a little bit of satisfaction. For me, for example, washing my clothes. The satisfaction of watching my woman hang my shirt on the line to dry, just watching her do it is a kind of satisfaction I can never pay for, even if the helper does it better. And so what it does is that it comes from your emotional or your psychological attachment. Having your woman prepare you breakfast, having your guy paint the house, having your woman wash your clothes, having your guy spread your bed and get the children ready for school is something that you can never pay for. It's something that when you stand and you look at it, you feel a sense of pride and all of that. So if you are in a poly relationship, no matter how many persons you go to, each person does it different, it will never give you the satisfaction.
You have broken up once you said if you're in a poly relationship.
Okay. So if you're in a poly relationship, you will never be completely satisfied because you will continuously be having to pay attention to somebody else and trying to please somebody else. You may adjust, but it's more difficult to be satisfied. You know, it's way more difficult to be satisfied in that situation.
I understand what you're saying, but for the people who are polygamous, they believe it's harder to be satisfied in a monogamous relationship than they feel to, you know, so it's like.
That is understandable. That is understandable. I mean, that is understandable. I'm not bashing somebody for their own choice. Like I said, I'm a religious person. I am against poly relationships in that form. But have we as Christians all been in that situation once or twice? Yes. I mean, some of us have been cheaters. Some of us have committed adultery. Doesn't make it right, but the human tendency tells us that it has been done on more than one occasion. So this is for Christians who probably struggle with it. I'd like a Christian who struggle with it to look for it. This is for somebody who is probably an atheist, don't believe in God, but have some semblance of moral knowledge where they can know that even though I don't believe in God, this will still affect the children I will have, and this will still affect society, this will still affect my finances, this will still affect my health. And so this is far wider than just the religious expanse that I believe in. For church, it would be like, listen, church, this is where the Bible says it is wrong. But for everybody else, I want them to know that outside of just a religious perspective, from a societal, emotional, physical, psychological point of view, it can be detrimental. And if I should say, let me play devil's advocate for a moment, it can be detrimental if not administered properly, effectively, with the utmost understanding between partners who participate in such things.
Oh, yeah, totally understandable. And, you know, for my answer to the question, title of the video will be, should people be polygamous? For me, I would say no, and this is coming from a non-biblical aspect. I understand everyone. If people want to be, they can be, but is that how we were meant to be? I don't think so, only because I just look at the population of the world as a whole. And I don't think God would have made it 50% male and 50% female if we were all meant to just, you know, be one man with multiple women and one woman and multiple men. I feel like that creates an imbalance. Just looking at the world. And then even when you look at the countries that mainly practice it, I mean, there's a lot going on in those countries, man. There's a lot going on, and there's a reason for that. I do think like too much openness. And I'm not no crazy super conservative or anything like that. I've always said I feel like I fall somewhere near the center. But I feel like a lot too much openness. I'm not speaking for like, you know, whether people are gay or bisexual. If that's what you know, that's what you are, that's what you are. I'm just speaking more so openness of thinking that you can just freely be having sex with multiple people and no repercussions. I think that that's just very, that's a false,
It's
how do I put it?
risky.
That's a yeah, it's a false way of
It's
thinking,
risky.
because you know, even the studies show that people with a high number, let's say 10 plus sexual partners, come with a lot more issues. They have a lot more
Emotional
issues,
baggage.
not just emotionally, but even just with having more higher chances of STDs and more mental issues and things like that. So I don't feel like those things would be happening if we as humans were meant to be this way. If people, you know, one man to one woman, and I guess these days, you know, there's woman to woman and man to man too, but let's just speak from a perspective of one man to one woman, like the world is, because there's 105 boys born to 100 females, right? For every one female born, there's 1.05 male. There's 1.05 male. And but over time the numbers dwindle because men die quicker and younger, and then it goes down to like 1 female to 1.01 male. So it's like 50-50 basically. But you know, people will have their arguments on either side, and I try to understand both sides. And I say, you know what, for me and my children, I think the best outcome for them would be, you know, to know that I have one mommy and one daddy. And you can have aunties and uncles and things like that who help out, but at the end of the day, they have these two authoritative figures. And I think that that's important for children. From my perspective, I you know, you poly people watching, I'm not saying stop what you do, what you want to do. Do what you want to do. Just think about your children. That's all. I hate that. Oh my God. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. Just sharing your perspective. And you know, probably for my audience watching, I'll try to have someone in the future come on who is pro poly, because I just like to share a fair perspective. I feel like, you know, you're you know, against polygamy, and I'm technically against it, even though I understand it. I'm against it just for society as a whole. I don't think it's beneficial, but I think, you know, some audience would also like to hear from the perspective of someone who is very much pro poly and just have their perspective on things, because it might be very different, right? So yeah, for people watching, just know I'm gonna try to get someone on who is pro poly as well. But yeah,
Okay, I look forward to seeing that video.
yeah, I'll get them on soon. But yeah, I want to thank you so much for coming on to my channel, sharing your perspective and all those good things. You can tell the audience where to follow you at. You know, yeah, tell them where to follow you at.
Okay, so I only use two handles effectively. So in Instagram, it's EanMC1, that is EANMC1. And on Facebook, it's EanJJ Mac. All right. So Ian, JJ, Mac, 3 different words. And so that's how you follow me on Facebook. And so I don't have a YouTube channel yet, but that one will come soon. And as you follow my social media pages on Instagram or on Facebook, you will see the updates as to when that will be coming along.
And what
But
will
thank
the
you for
channel
having
be
me.
about?
Oh, well, I do intend to have a channel about social circumstances and general knowledge. It's going to be pretty much the same things that you do. However, I won't be having interview formats with my channel. I'm unable to give you the name at this time, owing to the fact that I'm still working on seeing if there's any other channel that has a piece of the name in it, a part of it, or if there's any other social media handle anywhere else that has the same attachments to it. You know, you all have to do that before you start to make Facebook pages and Instagram handles, so you don't have confusion. So far, I'm in that stage, and as time goes by, so it will be on my Instagram page, which is EANMC1, or on Facebook at Ean and that is my Ean is spelled EAN, ENJJ Mac. And as time goes by, we will know about that further. So I am a graphic designer, I'm a public speaker, I'm a poet, and I'm an MC. So when you're getting married, you can invite me to do your reception.
Nice, nice. Again, thank you so much. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on my next video.
Kudos.